All right, and it's still the ultimate morning show on your number one dial, Reaper 100.5 FM. Welcome back to the Abuja studios. My name is Dimba, and it is time as well to check out the papers and see what the dailies are saying this morning. Just to notify you that we are live on YouTube at Ray Power Abuja. Just go to YouTube at Reaper Abuja and join the newspaper review live there, and also share your comments on some of the stories that might actually, pique your interest. Your contribution there is highly welcome. Now, let's get right to the papers. We're starting off with the New National Standard is on the Oyo school abductions. Again, DSS rejects life imprisonment for terrorists, insists on death sentence against three dreaded terrorists, proceeds on appeal, says killing of two teachers deserve capital punishment, death penalty for terrorists non-negotiable, coming from Shitu. The story is on page 2. What do you think about that? Is that also what you would push for? Well, go read out the story in detail and share your contribution in the comment section. Senate seeks tougher safety rules after Kogi coal mine collapse. Now, this story opens on the front page and continues on page 11. Another story here is on the 2026 Commonwealth Games. Go out there and win medals. Tinubu charges Team Nigeria. Story is on page 24. Commonwealth Games started on Thursday. That was yesterday. So, that charge is expected. All right, some more stories here. External reserves growth indicates better economic policies coordination, coming from Cardoso there. The story is on page 16. Ahead of 2027, APC uploads 13 governorship candidates, moves to heal rift. Very important. The story is on page 18. Dangote Refinery completes landmark $2.5 billion private equity placement on page 14. You will read that story there. Some more stories here. Tinubu approves 12 division structure for army recruitment of 28,000 personnel. Read that on page 8. Dixon vows NDC will survive anti-democratic forces. Talking about Senator Seriake Dixon. Well, the story is on page 18. And lastly, from the New National Star today, Senate summons CBN, NNPCL, 40 MDAs over alleged revenue infractions. Read the story in detail on page 3. Let's move on to another newspaper here. We'll be checking out the Guardian. Okay, a story that says from primary decay to tertiary distress. Now, that story says Southeast in throes of tertiary healthcare. The story is on pages 4 is concerned today. House approves state police bill amid walk includes guardrails. That story you can read on page 6 of the Guardian today. Ahead of 2027, CSOs flag gaps as INEC assures 2023 technical glitches have been fixed. INEC is giving the assurance. So what we saw in 2023 during the election will not happen, according to INEC. Still on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper today. Proposed pension hike will cause job loss. Business gives out that warning. That warning is on page 7. Convicted abductors of Orire teachers and pupils. That is on page 20. Passing aircraft skids off runway at Benin Airport. Presidency slams Atiku over US anti-Tinubu lobbying. The story is on page 3. It's just a whole lot when it comes to these matters on politics. But let's move on to other stories here. Ahead of 2027 election, Northeast political blocs backs Tinubu's second term. Claims Oyo Secretariat dismisses factional claims. The story is also on page 3. Well, That's it from the Guardian this morning. Let's move on to the Punch newspaper. Big story says walkout rocks House as state police bill passes. Protests erupt over controversial House vote. House Minority Caucus insists. Story you can read in detail on page 2 from the Punch newspaper today. Employers reject federal government pension contribution hike. Page 22 read. And sadly, death toll in Zamfara. Farmers attack rise to 23. That story is on page 4. Well, 2003 poll, we are going back to 2003 right now, and that is as a result of a bit of a fallout with the former president Olusegun Obasanjo and Osoba. Says Obasanjo faults Osoba, accuses Atiku of impeachment plot. Well, that story you can read in detail on page 30 of the Punch newspaper today. Enugu air incident forces Benin airport shut down. NSIB begins probe. The story from the Punch newspaper today is on page 21. Okay, now from the Punch, we'll move on to the Disclosure News this morning. Big story. Tinubu and the National Assembly are under fire for allocating 22.15 billion naira 8 billion naira as well to renovate palaces, mosques, and churches. Article CUPP raises alarm, accuses the federal government and the National Assembly of misplacing priority, describe action as blank check. 780 million naira inserted for church in my constituency aimed at curbing youth vices, says Deputy Speaker Kalu in his defense. Well, the story is on page 2 from the Disclosure News today. Ahead of 2027, Trump's letter, not a reflection of realities in Nigeria, won't save you, ADC tells Tinubu. Did you check out the papers yesterday? Because that was where, this Trump's letter was really, trending. It was one of the major headlines from the newspapers yesterday. But for this following up story, you can read that on page 5 of the Disclosure News today. Opposition stages walkout as 311 reps pass state police bill. 311 reps. How many do we have in the National Assembly? How many representatives? So when you have 311, I think we are having over majority, right? Well, the story is on page 5. 6 candidates battle for UN Secretary General job. That's a bit of a foreign story there, and it's on page 10. After pleading sentence, page 2 read, DSS kicks on that matter, as we've already read earlier with the other paper, New National Star, demands death sentence, set to appeal the judgment from, this life sentence judgment to death sentence. Well, the story is on page 2, like I already said. Still on matters on insecurity here, there is a story. Tinubu expands army to 12 division, directs recruitment of 28,000 new troops. Page 10, read there. No casualties as Enugu aircraft suffers runway incursion. This is a release from the management, and the story is on page 10. Reporting Tinubu to Trump is a story here. Article undermining Nigeria's sovereignty and dignity. This is a warning coming from the federal government. We'll read that story in detail on page 11 as we move on to the Wasteland newspaper this morning. CBN shifts credit to businesses as government borrowing drops to 40 trillion naira in June. Right as to that story, private sector lending rises to 2.22 trillion naira to rising to 83.26 trillion naira. Net domestic credit hits 123.29 trillion naira, despite 26.5% interest rate. Cardoso defends CBN reforms as Senate hails FX market stability. Well, want to read that on business and economy, go to page 9 of the Wasteland newspaper today. Meanwhile, court throws out Kingdom College's 200 million naira suit against Abia Speaker Majority Leader. Do you know about the story? Well, that story in detail is on page 7 of the Whistler today. Students sit on bare floor in Katsina School. That is on page 6. read it in detail, and then again it brings up the question immediately: what happens to the fund release for out of school children, trying to make sure development in schools? That's the first question that comes to mind on that part, on that matter. Anyway, ADC, others counter presidency, say Trump's letter didn't endorse Tinubu. Page 15. Tinubu approves 4 new army divisions, 28,000 personnel recruitment, page 13, and inadequate metering fuels Nigeria's power sector liquidity crisis, coming from Tegbe, and this story is on page 12. Well, we'll move on to the Daybreak newspaper, after which we go to check out the business story before we get into conversations on the paper this morning. From the Daybreak newspaper, Tinubu approves expansion of Nigerian army to 12 division. Makurdi, Ilorin, Jalingo, Benin City get new military commands, right? Authorizes recruitment of 28,000 additional personnel. Well, for the Daybreak newspaper today, the story is on page 2. Shettima, 6 governors depart Abuja for Benin Republic. Well, that story is on page 8 of the Daybreak. Atiku undermining Nigeria by lobbying against Tinubu in the US, coming from the presidency. That's a B urges INEC to extend voter registration ahead of 2027 polls. This of the Daybreak newspaper today. Now to other story. Gas flaring is the matter here. Nigeria loses $5.5 billion as methane waste hits $30 million daily. That's scary. That's on page 9. House of Representatives pass state police bill. Page 21 read, and NSIB begins investigation into Enugu aircraft runway excursion incident, talking about Enugu aircraft skidding off the runway at Benin Airport, where both stories are on pages 13 and 7 of the Daybreak newspaper today. Well, let's just check out the papers before we get right into the conversation, like we said.
This is the newspaper review.
All right, for the business story, strictly we are checking the Business NG. Big story says all electricity consumers to be moved. Statement is coming from the federal government. We'll get to that story soon. Dangote Refinery secures $2.5 billion in oversubscribed private placement. Opens on the front page here, continues on page 2. Meanwhile, Tinubu approves expansion of Nigerian Army to 12 division, 28,000 new recruits. Page 2 read as well. Bayelsa government suspends unhygienic pomo processing over public health concerns. All right. Reps order suspension of NRS recruitment against Zach Adedeji over non-compliance. Page 2 read there. And Nigerian stock markets rebounds as investors push market capitalization by 1.5. The Business NG. Nigeria's Accountant General of the Federation, Ogunjimi, elected chairman of African Accountants General. Well, the story is also on page 2, and that's about it from the business story and the papers we have for this morning. That is the business story, Daybreak newspaper, the Whistler, the Disclosure News, the Punch newspaper, the Guardian, as well as the New National Star newspaper. Now, a few stories are coming from, efforts on security matters. If you check out the papers, you see the reps have passed out the bill to support state police, even though there was a little bit of a walkout, a stage, kind of a protest. But according to statements coming from the minority leader on that matter, says it's not necessarily because of the state police bill, but it is because some of the procedure did not follow, what you have in the parliamentary constitution. So that is why that walkout was stayed. But that is one thing that has happened. You also see the president approving more division in the Nigerian army, all in efforts to see how they could, maybe tighten border control or improve the response time when there is any kind of issue, out there regarding matters on security, emergency security threats, and all of that is protecting the national everything about security entirely. That is what has been done. And under this approved new plan, we have 4 new divisions. We used to have 8 divisions. Now, 8 to 12 divisions. Yes, we had 8. Now it is 12 division. I hope that is that. And then now we have 4 new divisional headquarters being created, as the Daybreak newspaper mentioned it, in Makurdi, in Jalingo, in Ilorin, and in Benin City. Well, those will be done in phases. September is where the phase 1 will take place. December is where the second phase will take place. That will be for the 83rd division. So all of which are quite interesting, and of course questions and all that keep rising up on the whole matter, but one would say that it is a very welcome development, because defense analysts over the years have actually given their own argument that the military is overstretched. The Nigerian military is overstretched, too thin across all the multiple internal security, do this, do that. But if you have this and you also have additional 28,000 people being recruited into the military, maybe there is a little bit of, time, ease for, the job to be done in those areas. So, but that is that on the matter of creating the division and ensuring that. Meanwhile, the story is still ongoing regarding the 3 kidnappers, the bandits, terrorists who have been, sentenced in court, and the DSS is saying, look, the Orire teacher, everyone knew about that gruesome matter, and in this week, DSS has already released a story about how that teacher's beheading was in line with a demand for these people to be released, and because they saw that Nigeria was not actually in court, had to change their story from not guilty to guilty just to find a way to get out of whatever punishment is being served. And now the DSS is saying, look, life sentence is not the best way to go. Let them, death sentence should be the better thing to be done. What's your opinion? Like I asked earlier in the paper, you can actually share that and we'll get to know. Anyway, another matter that has happened in the Senate and in the presidency is, the presidency and the Senate actually being, in fact, the president and the National Assembly actually being on a hot seat, like they are under fire. That is how they used to say it here, that for allocating almost 30.2 billion naira to rehabilitate the royal palaces, churches, mosques, to renovate them. And a lot of people are asking questions about it. We have the secular state, some people who are saying that the Northern Christian Elders Forum and the legal analysts giving the question of whether the appropriate public tax that we have, for religious structures and everything, that it really violates, what's going on, and it prohibits this whole thing. Why would you allocate such a huge amount of money to rehabilitate this, to renovate these areas? It is not helping, especially at a time when millions of Nigerians are facing severe, food inflation. How healthcare, our healthcare system are really facing a whole lot. How would you put out a whole 30.2 billion naira just to renovate royal palaces, mosques, churches? What's the drama? The matter, and some major political leaders have already reacted to it. We also saw the Atiku Abubakar over the matter, saying that it is actually a constitutional aberration. And what was it that he said again? Okay, he said God is not a laundering machine for public funds, something like that. These were his own, reaction to the matter. A lot of statements coming under that backlash. And to make the matter worse, civic watchdogs report that over 5 billion naira worth of this project didn't even have specific addresses listed to them in the budget. So, people keep asking that hard question. Is it really genuine to support community leaders, or is it just another budget padding that is disguised as religion, as royal palace and all of that ahead of the 2027? These are the major questions that a few persons are asking regarding the matter. Well, let's move on from that because of time and go to another matter that is, touching you and I in this country. When the federal government talked about the tariff and how we are moving, there are a lot of band with some letters of the alphabet, band A, band B. Some people even say that they are in band Z because they don't get to see light. Not that it is there as a band, but because of the way that we are the last area of getting light, so we are in band Z. People who are in band A are getting light. Well, the federal government had earlier said then that there will be a plan to ensure there is a stable power supply. It's a gradual phase. Does not necessarily mean it's going to be like that forever. And now we are seeing a statement from the government that, this long-term policy goal of having stable power supply is a move. We're moving into it. So the band A, that all the electricity consumers must be moved to band A model very soon. That is coming from the business story, the big story from the Business NG this morning. The Ministry of Power and that of the Electricity Regulatory Commission are dividing this whole thing and trying to make sure that this is what is happening. That's how the whole effort will be made to move everyone. But there is a very good clause which Nigerians are supposed to pay attention to and make sure that they follow it. If you are moved to band A, what was that clause? Okay. The consumer protection right now, it says if you are moved to, if the electricity distributor, that is DISCOs, if they move you to any band and attempt to charge you what that band is not supposed to be given, you have a right to protest, to put out a question out there. I think the band A's are supposed to have up to at least 20 hours of power supply. How many hours of power supply are you having right now? Is a question. 20 hours in 24 hours of a day might not be bad considering Nigeria's history so far. So if you have 20 hours of power supply, you are comfortably in adequate payment. Of course, there should be the move. Of course, calls and effort and clamors have been all there saying, look, we don't even need the estimated bill, because the more you look on the estimated bill, the less you see. But I think that there is every need to put every Nigerian on the prepaid meal, pay as you go, use what you have. If you don't have light and you cannot afford, then that one is another thing. So all of that, as well as calls to subsidize the rate on the tariff for some people, make it easier for Nigerians to actually choke in the process of the whole thing, is another call on that. But that is one major thing that is in the paper. So very soon, according to the federal government, everyone will be moved to the band A model. That is that. Don't say you didn't hear that from the newspaper today. That is one of the major stories you've heard. So prepare yourself and get to know your rights on that area while you're preparing yourself. Anyway, efforts are still going. Plans are still ongoing. INEC has made their own statement coming from the Guardian newspaper that the glitch we experienced in 2023, during the election, has been fixed. It has been sorted out. So let's pray and hope that while we conduct the 2027 election, as far as technology is concerned, we won't have anything to say, hey, you defaulted here. Everything should work out well. That's what we are hoping for. And that's where we're wrapping up the newspaper review for this morning and taking you to the network studio for more conversation. Thank you very much for being with us. Abuja. My name is Dima, and it's always a pleasure hanging out with you. Start this weekend, this Friday, on a very beautiful note. I'm wishing you that.